These people are the reason why you feel the way that you do. Right? Join us over here and we can all do it together. Right? And it's like, again, there's something that's very tempting and very easy about doing that. Mm-hmm. But it'll rot you from the inside. Mm-hmm. It'll completely rot you from the inside, and it only breeds violence, which breeds violence, which breeds violence, which breeds violence. And violence is not always necessarily physical. You know, violence is many things. Violence is something that you do to yourself. Hanging on to hatred is violence to yourself because of what it does to you. And that's propaganda, man. That's propaganda.
This is Way of the Artist with Brandon Colby Cook and Evan Schulte.
Exploring the challenges of the creative call
so that you can claim your own path
and make your life a work of art. All right, everybody, we're back doing that podcast thing. Geez, sound more depressed. Why don't I? No, I'm excited. I'm excited about this one. Brandon, you sent me this quote last week, and it floored me a little bit for a variety of reasons, and we're going to get into that. So this is an Artist Wisdom Series episode where we take a great quote from, a great artist of some kind, and today we've got one from the incredible Aldous Huxley, who, you may have come across his name, maybe read some of his books, but I would say probably A Brave New World is his most famous one, kind of like, almost like not a counter to like an Orwellian sort of dystopia. He kind of had his own vision of like a future, like utopia, dystopia idea, and a lot of them are they're very prophetic really to our current time. But anyhow, Aldous Huxley, incredible writer, incredible thinker, and all that stuff. And so you sent me this quote, Brandon, which I'll read for everybody right now. The purpose of propaganda is to make one set of people forget that other sets of people are human. I'll say it one more time. The purpose of propaganda is to make one set of people forget that other sets of people are human. And when you sent that to me, I was just kind of like, it took me back for a second, and then I considered it and was just like, whoa, that is so true. And then I went to, wow, what a gift for him to be able to see that. And especially the time that he lived as well, like he saw like through the Second World War into the Cold War, like he's like, where there was a lot of what we consider to be like a heavy time of propaganda, which it was. But this quote also, to me, I was like, what a gift this is, because it gives us such a clear like way to observe what messaging is doing to us. How is it making us look and think and see? And how, if some kind of messaging you're getting is making you think that another group of people is not even just that they're not human, but they're somehow less human, right? Like I would put those kind of in the same camp, right? That's propaganda. Anyone who's saying anything that's making you feel that way, that's propaganda. And I mean, I think that that's just such an incredible thing to give us awareness. I think that there's also some things that we can get into about art. And I mean, art can become propaganda. Although I would say that I would argue if it's even art at that point when it becomes that, which is something I'm interested in talking about. Can art also be propaganda? Or can propaganda be art? I don't know. But I'm interested in getting into that as well. But I think that this is a very sort of relevant quote also for our time, not just for his time, but it's super relevant today because I think that we're all very saturated by propaganda from all kinds of different places. And this kind of gives us a pretty clear idea about what it's actually doing.
Yeah, I'm glad that you wanted to dig into this as an artist's wisdom. I think one thing that I'm recognizing is that if I'm ever not seeing another human being, like if I'm like so angry that I'm like, oh, they're just all terrible, they're all bad, that or something makes me feel that way, or I'm getting information that's making me perceive something as just like purely antagonistic, purely bad. That's propaganda. And I think the thing is like in this day and age, I think it's really important for us as just humanity to begin to understand what propaganda is. I don't know how many people I've talked to who were like, yeah, we learned about propaganda in school, I remember, but like I never knew what it was. And when you can't see it, you don't even know you're dealing with propaganda. And I would even argue that there's a lot of people who don't even know what propaganda is. Like I say this word and they're like, what the hell are they talking about? So I'll give you a definition just based on my own interpretation. It's not the definition, but I would say that propaganda is an agenda for someone to propagate an idea that is basically their way of seeing things, doing things, interpreting things. And they're getting you to essentially see it their way, which is getting you to side with them against a perceived antagonist, so that then you will team up with them and be against someone else. And I would say that a lot of people create antagonists all over the world that aren't even their antagonists. They were just told this is a bad person. And, the problem is that you begin to take on this hatred of something and this dehumanization of something, but you don't actually have a reason. They say I would say all racism is propaganda, because ultimately a lot of people do learn racism, they say, from the family. So someone said, hey, these group of people are bad. And then you just kind of, maybe you're a child, maybe you don't know. And so you just kind of go along with it and you agree with it. And so you start to take on this filter of like looking for this group of people are bad, and you dehumanize them. And, you're extremely susceptible as a child, but you're actually quite susceptible. I'd say now people are susceptible. We're almost childlike, because we don't get, well, here's an interesting thing. I'll just say this. Propaganda is also partly pervasive in our culture because we don't do critical thinking anymore. And the reason why is like what used to happen is you used to be presented with information and there wasn't like conjecture, there wasn't opinion. So you would get, hey, this happened over here and this happened over here. Moving on, this happened over here, this happened over here. And so what you would do is you would begin to surmise and put together and synthesize the information and try to make sense of it, which would cause you to critically think and then develop your own opinions. But we don't work that way anymore. We get so much information thrown at us, way too much, that we like when people give us their opinion on it, because then we don't have to think about it. So someone will tell you the information and then tell you what they think about it. Watch TikTok, watch Instagram, watch any of this shit. Even your Facebook wall. People will say, hey, this happened. I really think it's fucked. And it's like, can we leave out the part where like your opinion? Why don't you just tell me the information? But we don't get information that way. And so the problem is that's actually propaganda. Anything with conjecture, opinion, or anything like that. But if you look at almost all information we get, it has some opinion attached to it. Yeah, and it's a bias. And the problem is that people don't even realize when they've been propagated. So I think what's very interesting about this is that propaganda also, one last thing I'll say, this is what's interesting with propaganda. Propaganda devolves us. And my argument on that is that in all of us deep down at the core, we're all like cavemen, cavewomen, cave people, right? We're like warriors, tribal, right? So the thing is like we bond together, we see enemy, we protect each other, and we feel safe in the group. Exile means death. So now what happens is propaganda goes, if you don't agree with the propaganda, you are now exiled, which means death. So people don't even want to go against, they might not even agree with it, but they're like, you know what, I have to agree with it because I get kicked out of the tribe otherwise. And the tribe also says, not only do you have to agree with us, you have to fight with us. And if you don't fight with us, then you're also less than and also up for exile. So propaganda is problematic in this way. And I do think it kills art. I think art gets used by propaganda, but I think if you look at any art that has propaganda in it, it's like it's got something strangling it and it's being asphyxiated. It's dying on the vine, you know? So I'm very interested in exploring that idea too. I do think they do overlap a little bit and they get corrupted. Art gets corrupted by propaganda. I still think it can exist with propaganda, but I think it gets extremely stifled. And when you see it, it's almost hard to even look at art when you see the propaganda in it. And we're seeing that a lot today.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing I think as well, you know, and as far as things that I just understand about propaganda is that the propaganda, its origin is from places of power, right? The places of power are typically the ones who are benefiting the most from the propaganda and getting other people to promote propaganda, right? Because there's some kind of profiting that is going on there. Somebody is getting something out of it, right? When it's being sort of spewed out and spread out and whatever it is. Because the thing is, like, when people start seeing each other as human, that's a problem for some people
Who are in power.
Yeah, which we have to be very careful because it's like okay, we're heading into territory of making, you know, powerful people
There you go.
not human, right?
Yeah.
So it's like it's which is, you know, again, part of, you know, the function of art to me is about connection. Like it is about reminding us all how connected we are, how much the same that we are, which is why I argue that, like, well, under this definition, sort of propaganda, as Aldous Huxley has put it, it's like, well, then if art is about connecting us, not always just to each other, but connecting us to life, connecting us to existence, connecting us to beauty, but it's always about connection, right? Or connecting us to understanding ourselves in some kind of a deeper way. Well, propaganda is the complete antithesis of that thing. It's about division. It's not about connection. It's about severing things off, seeing things as other from you. This is different fundamentally in some kind of way. It's
building connection through division.
Yeah, right. But it's still division, right? Like and so again, there becomes a problem when people stop seeing each other as other, right? Like because suddenly nobody wants to go and fight and kill people anymore because it's like, oh, holy shit, this person's just like me, right? This person's just trying to live their life and figure things out, and you know, they're getting stuff spewed at them just like I'm getting stuff spewed at me. They really just want to, you know, have love, have connection, have family. They want to, you know, like, and have friends and experience joy, and you know, and they also suffer heartbreak and they grieve at the loss of people. Like we're all the same, you know, in the most important kinds of ways, right? And propaganda makes us forget those things, right? By trying to say that somehow you are fundamentally different, right? And like with this group, right? We need to get a group of people to all agree on this idea, right? But again, that whole thing is about benefiting and profiting some person, right? And, you know, I don't know if it's something that we want to go into in this conversation, but, you know, we could start talking about, okay, so why do certain people want that? You know, like the thing what are they getting out of it? How did they become that way? I mean, that might be a bit of a rabbit hole to go into, but I'll just comment on one last thing here to what you just said as well. Like, as far as propaganda and art, it's like, yeah, it's heavily, there's our art and media is particularly, I would say, like within film and television and stuff right now. Like, there's a ton of propaganda and not just like, you know, again, left and right is like a whole polarizing thing, right? But like there's, whether it's sort of, I guess, for a lack of better terminology, liberal or conservative kinds of media, right? We're so inundated with that kind of messaging, right? There's us and there's them, right? So much as like you have, you know, like I've seen like showrunners and producers making comments like, well, this isn't for you, right? Like there's like we have a message and we're saying this thing, and it's kind of like this, and it's not like an invitation to people, you know, it's not an invitation to say like, hey, like we're trying to explore some of these ideas and go into understanding each other and humanity in this kind of way. It's more so like a thing of like, we're ramming this down your throat, and if you don't like it, fuck off. Yeah. Right? Because you're a piece of shit. Yeah. Like, it's really the undertone for a lot of this stuff. And it's like, well, this is not art. Yeah. This is not the function. This is propaganda. If that's the way you feel you need to go about communicating the ideas that you're presenting, because look, there's always ideas being communicated in art, right? Always. But if that's the way in which you need to go about it, if that's the way in which you are backing your ideas, it might be time to take another look at not necessarily the what of what you're doing, but the how you're doing it.
Well, yeah, you bring up some good stuff. I mean, these are all like landmine topics, right? Like when you get into politics and you get into all that kind of stuff, because people get so emotionally provoked by it. But the thing is, you know, I think what people need to understand you have to recognize, first of all, and if you don't think you've been propagated, if you don't think that propaganda has influenced your life and affected you and actually robbed you of connection and creativity and like all this good stuff, if you don't think that it has, you're essentially blind and ignorant to yourself. You don't know yourself, because we all have. And the first step to change, the first step to growth and connection is self-awareness. And self-awareness is, honestly, it's like people talk about self-awareness like these fucking spiritual guru people, and they're like, oh yeah, you want to become self-awareness is fucking brutal. I'll just be honest with you. It's humbling and it's embarrassing. Like, and if you're not feeling humbled or embarrassed, you're not self-aware. I guarantee you, I guarantee you, because part of self-awareness is realizing how fucking ignorant you are and how little you know and how much you've been manipulated and propagated. So if you're walking around on a high horse going like, I'm immune to this, I'm maybe you, but not me, you're fucking propagated. I guarantee it. And you're an asshole because you're so fucking arrogant that you think you're immune to it. And I fucking guarantee you're not. And listen, I've been that person a little bit, like we all have. Because, so this is interesting. I studied a lot of psychology, social psychology in particular. And I still study it because I find it absolutely fucking fascinating. But the thing is that when I started my journey in social psychology, man, they would tell us these experiments. Oh, hey, we do this experiment, and they would show you some, and they would tell you about some others, and you'd be like, oh, I wouldn't fall for that. I would be above that. And you dig into it far enough, and you realize, shit, man, like I see where I'm susceptible to these social pressures. I see where I'm kind of, and so like what's very interesting, like for example, I'm a very defiant person. I'm very defiant to authority. I'm very, I'm very like independence, freedom. These are values of mine. But the problem is that's a propagated idea as well. Because I'm not truly independent and I'm not truly free in the way that I think I'm free, and I'm connected to people in ways that I might not want to always admit. And the thing is that with an independent, defiant type of person who says, this is my personality, this is my tendency, you can be propagated, but in a different way. So people who are, say, agreeable and they follow the rules and they respect authority and they listen, those people, it almost seems obvious how they get propagated, because basically it's like, well, those are the rules. That's what they told them to do. And so I think there is a bit of a judgment about people like that, where it's like, as though they're less than or more ignorant. They're not. What they had, most likely, let's go back to my psychology training here, which I'm not an expert at, but tends to be that you had parents that kept their word, that kept their promises, that showed up when they needed to, that took care of you, that didn't lead you wrong, didn't abuse you, didn't manipulate you, didn't do anything like that. Why wouldn't you walk into the world trusting, listening to authority, following the rules? Because in your childhood experience, no one ever led you wrong. It always seemed to kind of be trust. It was trusting. It was, these people cared about you. So you are going to probably walk around to some degree in the world as though people are like this. And unless somebody comes along or something comes along and interrupts that perception and experience of the world, you just think that's how it works. Then you take someone like me who's defiant, like doesn't always agree, challenges authority. You're like, well, what the fuck's wrong with that guy? Thing is that my parents weren't always there for me. They were neglectful. I mean, I'm not going to say they were, my parents were great in certain ways, but they were like, I was alone a lot. And my dad betrayed me a couple times, and he betrayed my brother. And, and the thing is that this broke and shattered my version of what, authority is. I had teachers literally stand up in front of class and lie directly to us. And then I caught them. These are authority figures I've had, and they're like, well, you're lying to me. You're manipulating me. You're deceiving me. Of course, I'm going to walk through the world now skeptical of all authority figures, defiant to them to some degree. Like, no, tell me why you want me to do this. Don't just tell me to do it. Tell me why. Give me a good argument. Because if you had an experience where people told you to do stuff and you realized that they were manipulating you, they were testing you or using you, you don't just trust what people tell you anymore. And so that could be actually a character flaw in me. It doesn't make me better. It just makes it harder for me to follow the rules and just follow orders. It makes me not a very good soldier, but it does make me a good leader. That doesn't make me better. That just means that, I tend to want to be the leader because I don't want to follow anybody because I didn't trust the people I could follow. The thing is that it also, to be a good leader, you have to be a good follower. So it doesn't matter. So I can say, oh, I'm a good leader. It's like, yeah, you're a good leader, but then you're not a good leader, because a good leader can follow too. And if you can't follow, you're actually not a good leader. So you see what I'm saying? Propaganda always positions you as the good one, the perfect one, the one that has it figured out. And then all these other people are idiots and they don't, and they're rotten and they're bad. One other thing I want to say about this, and I hope you can keep your thought, but I wrote a story, I want to say about 10 years ago, and this was the first kind of script that I had written where I had interest on a level where it was like, holy shit, my movie career, my filmmaking career, things are really going to happen. And remember, we did a table read for the movie. It was kind of for the producers and everybody, the financing team and everybody that was like, okay, like and I got a bunch of actors together. We did a big table read, we recorded it. And there was this one character. It was a very important, the kind of the main subplot. It wasn't the plot, it was the main subplot of the story. And it was basically this character's wife, and I just demonized her. I made her like this rotten person who, and it didn't have a lot of compassion for her. And I'm almost embarrassed about this now. I mean, this is the thing with creativity. Creativity is going to expose something about you that you're ignorant to, right? That's why I'm saying it's humbling and embarrassing. But, when I look back at that script, I go, well, yeah, she doesn't, some of her actions are not great. But if you look at her as a person, consider her position in the story, consider what she's dealing with, you might actually understand the choices she made. Everything she did actually makes sense to her. But the way that I wrote that particular draft, that draft we did the table read of, it was kind of ignorant and propagated in the sense that, hey, our hero's the good guy, and and this person in their life is not. And and what I've learned since then is that I can propagate my own issues into my own creativity. And, and I've become a better storyteller because I've begun to more holistically understand all my characters and understand that they are all people, even the antagonists, even the people I don't understand, even the people that do something that seems unforgivable and horrible, is if I'm really going to do the work well, I have to go in and try to understand, why does this make sense for this character? Why do they think that this is okay and that they can do this? How have they justified it? And then it's an emotional experience. I can tell you that, because some of my antagonistic characters have given me the greatest life lessons and growth, because they're the ones where it's like looking into your shadow, the thing that you pretend isn't there the whole time.
Yeah, I think it might have been just in our last podcast or one not too long ago, and this came up where it's when you follow a passion, it's going to show you things about yourself, that you might not have otherwise seen. There's just something about that. There's a connection relationship there in some way, where that thing is going to eventually start showing some things to you about yourself. And yeah, from the scripts that I've written too, I've gone like, whoa, holy shit. This is showing me some things about myself, and even acting as well, right? Which I have more experience with. You have to play parts where you've got to check your judgments. There's this character and you go, oh, holy shit. There's something with this I really don't like. There's something about this character I really don't like. And part of the job of an actor, which is one of the best, pieces of wisdom I ever learned about acting, and I've said on here before, but it's you can't judge your character. It's the same thing with writing too. You're writing a script, you can't judge your character. You have to have compassion for them. If you want to have any hope of playing them with any degree of sincerity and truth, you have to have compassion. Mm-hmm. Same thing with writing as well. It's if you don't have compassion for this character, where they're coming from, what they're doing, it's you're gonna write a pretty flat, uninteresting character to a large degree, mm-hmm. right? So there's something fundamental about that within art, which is why I kind of just go, art, it has a spiritual dimension to it, which is, whatever that means to you, but it's not it, which is why I think it's it has to go beyond the political and the ideological. It's something more than that. Mm-hmm. It's something that again is helping us glimpse into the deeper connection that we have in life, mm-hmm. right? With each other and everything else, right? But there was something else that I wanted to say about something that you had said, but it's left me.
Yeah, I did.
It's all right. It's all right. That's how these things go sometimes. It's how they go.
Did you pull up the quote again?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Let me just say. So I want to say that so I'm going to read the quote again. Just, I feel like it's good to revisit this because we do go on some tangents, like we take some paths, right? And then it's like, well, where are we? So the purpose of propaganda is to make one set of people forget that the other sets of people are human. And I think that as artists, our job is to try to make sense of how everybody is human. And I mean, I'm talking about like we can make a fish, like in Finding Nemo, human. Like It's all about how do we find the humanity. And so I think like for those of you who are artists, I mean, I'm sure that we have listeners who are not necessarily, don't consider themselves artists. They just kind of like topics that we discuss and maybe they're trying to be more creative in their life. But listen, like whether you take a career or a profession as an artist or not, we all have artistry in us and creativity in us. And I think that we all, at the end of the day, we all want love and connection. And I think that the part of the rule for our, not rule, but maybe the principle of art is that it brings us together. And I think that we need to remind ourselves that that's what we're doing here. So like, if you want to make movies or say you want to write a song or you want to create a television show or put up a play or whatever you're trying to do, the idea is really don't think about the people who aren't there to hear the story. Think about the people who you are bringing to hear the story. And, if there were listeners who were outside of that, who overheard that, they might want to join. So let me give an image to people. Imagine you're around a fire and there's a whole community of people that you know, and you can see them in the light of the fire. And you're telling them a story and they're all engaged and they're all listening and it's bringing this fire circle together. It's a beautiful idea, right? It's probably where stories mostly begin. Now imagine that there are other people. They're actually in the shadows and you can't see them from the light of the fire, but they can hear your voice and they're hearing you tell the story. And you're inviting them to come step into the light of the fire with you and to feel welcome. That to me is what artistry is. That's to me what creativity is. It's those people who are in the shadows, who haven't been invited into the light of the fire, who enter into the light of the fire and they get to be with the crowd experiencing the movie. The modern cinema, in my opinion, has depreciated greatly. There are really awesome movies and shows that come out here and there. But for the most part, there's a lot of crap, in my opinion. I own that. The problem is there's a lot of divisiveness. And like what you said, Evan, it's like, well, this wasn't made for you. See, that to me is like, well, then you're not an artist. You're a propagator. Because if that's what you're doing, you're trying to get, like, look, if people are listening outside and they don't like my story and they don't want to come into the fire circle and listen to it, it's irrelevant to me. You know what I mean? Like, but it's not that you're not welcome. The thing is in anything, it's like, there's many stories I can tell and there's many interpretations of stories I can tell. So there's two things I want to kind of point out. I'm trying to remember both. First one, story when I was a kid. I've told the story before, I'll tell it again. I'm 9 years old, playing soccer, and I'm like defense. I've never scored a goal. And, and I'm there on the field and, we're playing and everyone's parents are all on the sidelines. They're all cheering and everything. And then at a certain point in the game, all of a sudden the ball comes back to me. I take a shot. I score my very first goal in soccer. I'm like 9-10 years old, somewhere right around there. I look over, like my friends are, like my team, my friends, everybody's cheering. They know it's my first goal. Like they're so excited. They're like almost holding me up, and I'm looking on the sidelines and all the parents, they know it's my first goal. They're cheering. My friend's dad literally has the camera on us. He's recording the game. And it's a really joyful moment. And I'm scanning the crowd and all the parents, they're all excited and mine aren't there. And it's this moment in my life where I'm like, they didn't see it. And everyone else did, but they didn't, and it was so lonely and so joyful all at the same time. When I tell that story, I invite you to experience what it was like for me as a kid. To feel like you're doing something, but nobody's nobody that you care about is watching, right? And that's how I'm interpreting this. Okay, that's my little kid interpreting this. But I had someone say, yeah, but you're forgetting about your whole team that was surrounding you and all these other parents who weren't even your parent cheering for you. And that's what I'm not seeing, right? So this is the thing about when you share a story, your audience sometimes gives you this feedback and they go, yeah, you're telling me this story, but this is what you're not seeing about the story you're telling me. That's my first point. So this is why I say sharing your story is both vulnerable and sometimes embarrassing, because it's like, yeah, I'm focused on my parents not being there. And people are like, yeah, but your whole team surrounded you. Your friend's dad is there, like, doesn't that matter? Doesn't that mean anything? And it's like, well, of course it does. But I've been running my life like, no, it only matters if these people care, which is obviously a flaw in my character. It's obviously a flaw in me, right? So this story exposes something about me, which is embarrassing in a way, but also vulnerable. And that's part of the storytelling process. There was another point, and I knew I would forget the second one once I got into the first.
That's right.
Well, I'll share with you. Yeah, go ahead.
If you want a second, because I have something to say to that, because it's interesting, because yes, that it is true that there were all of these other people that were there, but there's something about, because I can relate to that. I remember, when I was on the basketball team and, my parents not being there to watch me play and, during great games and tough games and stuff like that. But I mean, it's like, it's interesting. It's like, yes, that is true, but I don't think it's necessarily a flaw, because there's something that I think we connect to when it's like, again, a great sort of amazing moment, right? Or even if it was a tough moment on the other end of it too, when it's like, when there's all of these other people that are there, but the people that matter the most to you aren't. It's like, that's something that, again, it's like, oh, how many of us can connect to that all around the world? Like, that's, we can go, yeah, I know what that's like. And this makes me think of something that my wife says. She used to say it all the time, but not as much anymore, but it's still true. And I think it's great. She said, don't tell people your opinion, tell them your experiences. Right? Because you could take this story that you said and share it as an opinion of some kind. It's like, where, I don't know, there's probably a number that you could spin out of it, right? Which is like, you need to always be there for your kids or you're a piece of shit, right? Or something like that, right? It's like, whoa, right? As opposed to, whoa, I hear that story. And it's like, and I can hear that as a parent and go, it's like, holy shit, I'm going to make sure that, like, unless there's something absolutely that I demands that I can't be there, to the greatest extent, I'm going to be there for those things for my kid, right? Because that's a real thing, right? Like, you just shared something, you didn't share an opinion, you shared an experience of something, right? And that's again, story, right? Like, and that's not just sharing an opinion about something. That's something real, right? And we can, and there's something that happens to us when somebody shares a real story like that, right? That it touches something, it connects us to something, to our own humanity. You go, whoa, yeah, what am I making the most important thing in my life right now? Am I making my kids the most important thing? Holy shit, I'm not. I'm making this thing more important. I might be missing these things. I might be making my kid feel that kind of way. And you know what? I remember when I kind of felt that way. Holy shit. I can have a shift in perspective, a shift like that happened because of something that happened to me, as opposed to somebody just giving me a lecture on something, which very often will just make me go, fuck you. Yeah. Don't tell me about, who I am and what do you know about me? Yeah. Right? Yeah. That's what happens, right? But when we share our stories and our experiences of these things, even though sometimes our perspective on on these things can be, yeah, like we're seeing it through a certain set of glasses, but there's still something that comes through because there's still something very true about it, right? Again, it's not propaganda. It's an experience, and you can't argue with somebody's experience, right? You might be able to offer another perspective on it, right? Like saying like, hey, but there's all these other people that were there. Right. Yeah, sure. That is, a perspective that can take some of the sting, but it's still there. I think that you still have to honor the sorrow of that moment of when, your parents, the people who mattered the most, not being there. It's kind of like that thing in, I love that Pixar movie, Inside Out. I haven't seen the second one, but like that first one, oh my God, what an emotional movie that is. But it's like there's, it has such a great image and it creates that sort of beautiful metaphor that like, yeah, sometimes we have these memories and they're colored by a few different things, right? It's like, yeah, what this amazing moment, you scored this goal, there's this joy, but there's also this little bit of blue in there too. And that's part of the tapestry of that makes us who we are, right? And so it's, again, yeah, sometimes this stuff is running through filters that aren't 100% necessarily objectively accurate, but I can still have a different perspective on your experience and your memory while still understanding and empathizing with what happened, right? That I can't argue with. To say it's like, yeah, hey, I get that. There were all these other people that were there and you have to acknowledge that. But I have to acknowledge the pain that's there too, because that, like, I get that as well.
Yeah. And I mean, oh man, there's so much to say here. One thing is like, I really love what you pointed out, share your experience, not your opinion. And, and I have made the mistake sometimes of telling a story, sharing my experience, and then sharing my opinion afterwards, which is something I've become more acutely aware of recently, where it's like, well, you don't need to share your opinion. Just let the experience stand on its own. You don't need to tell people what you think about it. You don't need to tell anybody, whatever. One thing I don't like to do is I don't like to blame and I don't like to make people wrong, because I don't like to villainize. And I used to do it. I don't like to do it anymore. I can share stories about my father and people can go, oh, your father, and they will villainize him, in almost to lionize me, The thing is like, it's not necessary. You know what I mean? Like the thing is that, I think when we're trying to get people on our side to villainize someone, we're in a propaganda. We're either propagating it ourselves or directly, intentionally, or we're doing it in unintentionally. That's why I think blame is such a dangerous thing to do. And I think we should be very, very careful not to do it. If my dad's not going to listen to this, most likely, but if he were, I would tell him, like, I don't talk to my dad, but I would tell him, I love you. Everything you've ever done, I forgive you for better or for worse. I am the man I am partly because you were in my life. I would tell him that. Is he perfect? No. Is he flawed? Yes. Am I perfect? No. Am I flawed? Yes. Am I the same flaws he is? No. It's fine. You know what I mean? Like, there was a time where my dad brought me to a tournament in Washington. And it was the opening season of the second year of being on this Metro team. And I rode the bench for the whole fucking first season. People have no idea what that's like. People have no fucking idea what I'm talking about. When you are there to play soccer and you're fighting tooth and fucking nail to get a few minutes on the pitch here and there, to get a chance, most people don't know what that's like. It taught me a lot of good lessons. I'm so grateful for it, but man, was it fucking hard. We showed up to this tournament. I don't know. At some point I got put in the game. This was the season hadn't even started. This is an opening tournament. Teams from all over the States and Canada were coming here. Big fucking tournament. I get put on. Our leading scorer, like, he's fucking phenomenal. Like, this guy is the leading scorer in the whole fucking province. Like, he's great, right? He's on my team. This guy scores up pretty much all our goals. He passes me the ball. I score a goal. This is like our opening game. Everyone's cheering, awesome, whatever. I think it was the first game. So then the next game, he starts passing me the ball. I score 2 goals. I have 3 goals in the first 2 games of this tournament, which is, in soccer, in this level, that's fucking huge. Like, goal scorers who win the goal scoring lead have 4 or 5 goals maybe, right? Oh yeah. So 2 games in, I'm like one of the leading scorers in the tournament. Like, I'm up there, right? And my dad's there on the sidelines watching it. And I remember we went for lunch. He took me out for lunch after the second game. I'm 3 goals up, like leading scorer on our team right now. And that was a beautiful moment. And you know what? He was there and he saw those goals. And I don't know if he understood that, but him just being there was very meaningful. You know, the thing is that it's like, you have these moments in your life that they're all sorts of things. And I think the thing is like, you know, I don't talk to my dad today, but some people don't have a dad. Some people lost their like, literally I could reach out to him. So there's a person out there who says, you know what, just fucking give him a call and just say hi to him now and then, just because he's your dad. Some people believe that. That's their position, right? I just, you know, what art has taught me is it taught me to find love in the darkest of corners. And fuck, man, you know, like, it's not easy. Like, there are still people, I could think of a few names. I'm not going to name them here on the podcast, it's irrelevant, but there's a few people I still haven't forgiven. I still feel anger towards them. There's still a fucking like, fuck you, you know? And I go, you know what, Brandon, that's okay. You know, you haven't worked that one out yet. You know, but there were people I never, ever thought in my life I would ever forgive. And I did. So I know that if it takes me till my final day, and even if I don't forgive these people, like, that's the human struggle. That's part of the journey. And what I don't want to do, though, is I don't want to become a divisive person in this world. And I think that, you know, propaganda it's a dark, nefarious force. I really think that, first of all, it's a force that most of us we don't understand, we're not aware of, and we don't see how it's seeping into our lives. And that's the first step to combat it. You have to become aware, and you have to see how it's already gotten you. Already gotten you. You're not immune. I don't care how much of a critical thinker you are. I don't care how good your parents were. I don't care. You have been propagated somewhere, somehow. You look deep enough, you're going to find it. And the thing is that anywhere that you feel hate, anywhere that you feel blame, anywhere that you make someone wrong, inhuman, any of that, you've been propagated. One thing about art is that if you truly want to do it well, if you really want to be good at it, which I do, for whatever reason, I don't have a desire, you just realize that these are just roadblocks. Every time you blame someone, it's just a big fucking roadblock to your creativity. Every time you hate somebody, it's a big roadblock. Like I just said, you know, there's a few people I haven't fully forgiven. These are roadblocks in my artistic expression. They are limiting me. They're handicapping me as an artist. And so it's in my best interest to try to forgive them, to try to heal them, to try to understand them. Also to look at the part that I played in it. At the same time, it would handicap me to just let them off the hook, because that's also not what I think is necessary. I think one of the mistakes sometimes with the empathy and compassion side of this whole thing is that we go, oh, well, you know, they were doing the best they could, and, you know, it made sense to them, and, you know, I forgive them and whatever. But they still did what they fucking did. And it doesn't make it right, and it doesn't make it okay, and you're still allowed to be fucking angry or hurt or whatever about it. And you have to process those emotions, and they need to be processed in the sense that they might need to be expressed somehow, like, and I don't know how you're going to do it. I had to deal with a lot of anger. There was a lot of anger I felt at a certain point in my life when I was younger. And I definitely had the thoughts that were poisonous, destructive, like I want to fucking hurt, you know? And I think that some of us act on those. And in my opinion, most people who act, at least anyone I've ever seen who acts on those, usually regrets it. They're usually embarrassed about it. And it's usually not something they're proud of. And usually the consequences that come with it aren't worth doing it anyway. So if you have to express anger or sadness or whatever, understand that you're not just expressing yours. This is what I would say, like this is what my wiser artist self would say to my younger, ignorant, propagated self. The sadness that you're feeling is not just your sadness. It's all of humanity's sadness. That moment where you scored your goal and your parents weren't there is not just your sadness. There are so many people out there that feel that exact same feeling or something like that. And your story bonds you with them. And it brings us together. And I would find that most often in humanity, we are brought together through our sadness, through our challenges, through our hardships. That's usually what bonds us closer. When things are joyful and easy, it's actually easier to be separate. We don't have to connect with each other. Interesting statistic. I'll just throw this in. More men than women will commit suicide. Okay? It's like 3 to 1 or something. It's a lot higher. Anyway, the thing is in good times versus bad times, what time do you think that men would commit more suicide? You would think that it would be in hard times. It's actually in good times. The reason why is because men feel more separate in good times than they do in bad times. In bad times, men tend to come together. They tend to bond. They tend to look for help. In good times, we think we should be good. And so then when we feel sad and angry, we don't know why, and then we don't know how to deal with it, and everyone else seems good, and there's no bonding. So in some ways, a lot of the time, that's why one of the things I love about drama movies, and I know a lot of men don't always they love action and that type of shit in general, but the thing is I do love a good drama because a drama can make you feel some shit that you didn't think you would feel. Okay, here, I remember that other story. Sorry, okay, it just came back to me. So there's this silly comedy movie. I think it's Owen Wilson. Anyway, it's got Kathy Bateman in it. I think it's Owen Wilson. It's called Failure to Launch. Kathy Bateman's just like his mom. She's like a minor character in the story, really. She's great. I think she's in a...
You mean Kathy Bates?
Kathy Bates, that's it. Sorry. Yeah, Kathy Bates. Thanks for the correction. Kathy Bates. So she's a great actress and she's really good in this. Anyway, I used to go to see everything. I used to go see all the movies. I was just studying them like incessantly because I just wanted to understand movies and storytelling. And there's a scene in that movie. It's a silly little comedy where this whole thing is about this guy who's like failure to launch. Like he's not really stepping out onto his own and becoming his own man and all of that stuff. Still like, I think living with his mom or something. But there's this moment, I think they're like in the laundry room or the kitchen or something like that. And like, she's kind of been like kind of allowing him to persist this way. And there's this moment where she's just like, I'm scared if you leave, like we won't connect. And holy fuck, did that make me cry in the theater. I'm watching this silly little comedy. I went on my own. Nobody's around me. There's a pretty packed theater. No one can really see me. And I'm fucking sobbing in this silly fucking comedy movie. And I guess it just made me empathize with my mom and my grandma who are so supportive and so loving and so many times. And like, and just oh man, holy shit. It just even thinking about it. And it's like, it can hit you in the funniest places, like in the funniest ways, and you just don't expect it. And my point is that, people don't know, like if we understand each other, if we understand where each other's coming from, it begins to make sense. Sometimes when people are holding us back or doing something gets in the way, it's a lot out of vulnerability and a lot out of fear, you know, an unacknowledged vulnerability and unacknowledged fear. And I feel like art breaks down a lot of those walls and propaganda puts them up.
Wow. That scene did that for you? Wow. Oh, it's a great scene. And Kathy, oh, she's great. No, it's funny because you said something that was something I was going to bring into the fold here. And it's kind of fascinating because you brought it up almost as like a throwaway. But I think that it's something that it's an acknowledgement that if you really sit with it, it can have an effect, right? And it's that acknowledgement of this person did the best that they could within their given set of circumstances and beliefs, right? And I've heard of as being kind of the definition of compassion, right? That is just like this person truly did the best that they could, right? Even though it might have been really shitty and really painful and really hurt, right? And I think when you say that thing, I think that part of the problem happens is when we try and use that as a way to not feel the hurt that happened, right? Like it's a way of trying to push that hurt feeling away and move on, right? When it's just like, no, you need to actually feel that hurt. And then you need to go into the like, wow, they did the best that they could, and really sit with that to be like, wow, like how is this their best? And that's very often the job of an actor, right? It's like, as an actor, you've got to go into that. It's like, whoa, this thing that they do is horrid, right? This is a terrible thing that this person has done. Where does that come from? Because people don't just do shit like that. Like it's very often, depending on the circumstances, right? It's like there can be just horrifying things. And, there is a kind of leap of faith that you have to take to do that, right? And it's also, and it's not an easy thing to do, which is, I think, why we don't ever want to spend time with it, which is maybe sometimes why we throw that away. It's like, well, they were doing the best that they could and blah, 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 blah. Well, it's like, no, you really, I think that it takes some work, right? It takes some real work to actually say they did the best that they could. And you might not know exactly why or how. You might be able to, you might know a little bit about this person enough to make some educated guesses and to feel into it. But, you've got to actually feel into it, and knowing that, whatever this is coming from some kind of hurt. It's coming from some kind of thing. Like they just were not given the tools to show up in the way that you wish that they had showed up in. Right. And that, again, that's something that can fly up in the face of the propaganda that we tell ourselves, right? Because it's easy to just say, fuck this person. And sometimes, I won't even say it, like sometimes that's a step, right? Sometimes that might be just, again, that's the best that you've got at that moment. The hurt is just too much and too great, or whatever it is that you just got to be like, no, fuck it. Fuck you. You're gone from my brain. Right. Yeah. You can't be here in my thoughts. But the thing is, like, that's such an intense charge, it doesn't actually really leave. It's just, you've kind of just shelved it, but it's still sitting up there on the shelf. Yeah. And eventually you're going to come back to it. It's time for some spring cleaning, right? Life says it's time for some spring cleaning, and you got to come back to this thing, right? And you've got to do that work of going through that box, right? And you've got to go through it. And a lot of that entails opening up your heart and compassion to this person. And there's a part of you that really doesn't want to, right? Because it's easier to see the person as other, right? As just some sort of, I don't know how you'd even put it, but just like some kind of alien, some kind of, inhuman thing. It's better to have you there. It's easier to have you there. But you're living with this anger. You're living with this hatred. You're living with this thing. And that's not sustainable. And not only is it not sustainable, but it's locking you away from your own humanity too. Because when you can actually go in and really truly understand and feel into that person, you open up. You open up as a human being. You can have some more compassion for yourself in the times that you're hard on yourself, right? You can have a greater understanding of the difficulty of being a human, right? And if you can forgive somebody for the things that they've done, it also makes it a little bit easier to forgive yourself for the places that you've messed up too, and because, again, I think that it's interesting that this conversation has had a lot of focus on compassion. It makes a lot of sense to me that this is where it's come from. We started this whole thing with talking about propaganda, because propaganda, again, is, I'll use the word antithesis again. It's an antithesis of compassion. Yeah. Like it's on the absolute opposite end of being a compassionate human being. It's about shutting that thing off. It's about completely closing that thing off to a group or groups of people. And saying it's like, no. Hang on to that hate. Hang on to that anger. Hang on. It's justified. Yeah. These people are the cause of your problems. These people are the reason why you feel the way that you do. Right? Join us over here and we can all do it together. Right? And it's like, again, there's something that's very tempting and very easy about doing that. But it'll rot you from the inside. It'll completely rot you from the inside, and it only breeds violence, which breeds violence, which breeds violence, which breeds violence. And violence is not always necessarily physical. Violence is many things. Violence is something that you do to yourself. Hanging on to hatred is violence to yourself because of what it does to you, right? And that's propaganda, man. That's propaganda.
I've been working on a novel that I'm writing, and and it's been a fun experience because it's a thriller and mystery, and I'm playing with twists and turns and all that type of stuff. And one of the things that the audience will experience when I do finally publish this and put it out there is that it's very set up in a way where you think you know who the enemy is, and then you realize, oh, that's not the enemy is this one, and then it kind of does it again and again, and it kind of just keeps you on your toes. You're like, so by the time you get to the kind of the final act of the movie, you're like, holy shit, I've been on a journey. And it's kind of a lot of what the story is. I want to give people a bit of an experience of how propaganda works, because that's not the point of it, because it's not really about that, but it does do this in the sense that imagine you hated somebody and you thought they were the cause of all your problems, and you just were like, oh, if only this person would fucking die, you know, or something. And you're like, if this person, and then my problems will be solved. And then you realize that it wasn't them, that they were relatively innocent or miscast, and you were propagated and you wanted that person to die. And it turned out that they were actually not bad and you had been manipulated. How would that feel? And then, you know, and then you go, okay, well, I know who it is now. And then you realized again, no, it's not. Yeah. And they're not perfect. Actually, the next thing you're looking at, yeah, you can actually even see more flaw. You can see, okay, well, that manipulation, but it's like, this is the problem with propaganda, is that it severely handicaps you as a person, because not only does it undermine your ability to critically think and make actual free choices for yourself, you are controlled without even knowing you're being controlled. And you're feeling feelings that you've almost been told to feel, as opposed to being like, you know, and what you're doing is like, when you don't like somebody or something, it is a projection. Ultimately, it's something unhealed within yourself, right? And that's why I think ultimately healing all our stuff is part of what frees us. But you know, I would say, you know, one thing that we haven't talked about so much in this conversation, but I do feel it's like an important point to kind of at least start to close on, is that you are not you in the sense that you think. You are humanity. You are the, or at least a expression of humanity, representing all of us in the human struggle and the human experience. And your anger and your sadness and your hurt and your joy and all the things that are you are a representation of all of us, because we all, in our own form, have experienced and are trying to work that shit out. And when you turn around and you hate and you blame, you're basically saying that what I feel is not okay, not right, not allowed. But you're actually saying what you feel, what I feel is not allowed, not justified, not okay. Propaganda separates you not from other, but from yourself. And what people don't realize, we're in a very propagated state right now, particularly in the Western culture. Very, very propagated. Mental illness is through the fucking roof. Drug addiction is going fucking wild. There's so much stuff, like so many fucking problems in the Western culture. And yet you have fucking everything you could ever want. You have food at you don't have to hunt. You don't have to do fucking anything. You're like, oh man, well, it's expensive, it's inflation, you know, whatever. You know, you'll figure out a problem. The thing is that you have everything at your fucking disposal. You're relatively safe, and if you're not, you can move and find a safe place. And the thing is that we have allowed the propaganda to become a physical manifestation, expression of the disconnection from ourselves. Because when you go and you blame someone else and you hate someone else, what you're saying, what you're really, truly saying, and this is the humble, embarrassing part, is I hate this part of me. I hate that it exists. I hate that it's possible. And what you're saying is that if I was in that position, I wouldn't do that. You don't know that. You really don't. You think you do, because you come from where you come from, and they came from where they come from. And where they came from, what they're doing makes sense. And where you come from, it doesn't. And the thing is what you really want to do is, I think one of the key things to do is to look at every person. And this is really fucking difficult challenge to do, but I would recommend this to everybody. If you have any hate, any blame, or anything that's going on, is I want you to look at that person as a child before all the fucked up shit happened to them, before they got hurt, before the world fucking kicked dirt on them, kicked them while they were down and did all the things to them, and really try to understand, where did it kind of make sense for you to go that way? This is the thing I have with my dad, right? So like, I love my dad, but I understand my dad. I understand him to the degree that I understand where things kind of spiraled for him, where things kind of went, and yeah, you can like, look, you can always say, well, he could have made a different choice. He could have gone, yeah, I would have loved him to. But, it's like fucking Star Wars, man. It's like the dark side and the light side, they're always fucking calling. The ring of fucking power, like the fucking Lord of the Rings shit. It's always fucking there. And you always have that choice. I'm going to get away from my dad for a second. I don't want to kick dirt on him. People who cheat on each other because they go, well, this person mistreated me. My partner mistreated me, or they already cheated on me. It doesn't fucking matter, man. If they did whatever they did, you just figured out a way to justify your shitty action. We have this world where we live in where people justify their shitty actions based on other people doing shitty actions. If you truly are good, which you're not, but if you truly are good, and I mean that about every human being in this world, even the good ones, if you truly are good, you will do good for the sake of good, period. You will not justify your shit action because the world did this to you, or someone did this to you, or everyone else is doing it, or whatever. You do it because it's the right thing to do. And I would say, before we're going to wrap this up, I would say one of the problems with our Western culture today, observationally, is that we do not see our connection to the whole. We see ourselves as individuals, and we justify our actions individually, which allows us to be separate. If you saw the whole thing as a whole connected, you wouldn't be able to justify your action. You would not be able to steal from somebody because you'd see that you were stealing from yourself. You would not be able to cheat on somebody because you'd see that you were cheating on yourself. And by the way, even if you think you got away with it, you're going to pay for it. And if you've already done it, it's too late. You're going to pay for it. I promise you pay for it. And you won't pay for it the way you think you will. You're going to pay for it in a way that's fucking far, 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 far worse. Far worse. And you know what? Just fucking take it on the chin, buck up and face up. Because the thing is, if you cheated on somebody, it's not that they might ever find out. It's not that, yeah, you did this thing, you betrayed them, you fucking you did that. You have to live in a world now where people cheat. And that's your hell. And you're going to have to fucking mend that hell. And that's the thing. And the thing is, in Western culture, because we think we can be individuals and justify our actions and do things individually, and that it doesn't have an effect on everything else or our internal world, that's where propaganda is so pervasive on us, because it makes us go, yeah, it's okay to hate. No, if you hate, that's your hell. That's what you just put in your internal world. So anytime you feel like something provocative comes up online and it says, this person's so fucking horrible, hate them. You need to stop and go, why is this person or whoever, this message, this video, why is this thing I'm watching trying to convince me to hate myself? That's what you should be asking. Not why are they convincing me to hate this person? Why are they trying to convince me to hate myself? What do you get out of that? It makes me so fucking angry. But the thing is that, you know what? That's something to look at even, right? That's something to look at. It's like, yeah, when have I blamed someone else? When have I lionized other people against somebody? I hate that. I don't like that. Okay, I got to forgive myself. I made a mistake. I fucked up. Like we all did, right? The mending process. It's embarrassing and humbling. That's the defeat of propaganda and creativity.
Oof. All right, let's wrap this one up. All right. Well, I brought the beer. We've probably had this one before. This is from Fernie Brewing Company in Fernie, British Columbia, if anyone. Fernie is a beautiful little mountain town. Great skiing up there from what I understand. And this is their hazy IPA. It's called Hit the Deck. Hit the Deck hazy IPA. And it's good. I don't know. It's good. I seem to never go wrong with anything with a hazy. Yeah. Anything hazy always seems to be a success, and so is this one. I've enjoyed it. It's gone down pretty fast and smooth. So, I don't know. Do you have any comments on the beer?
Good. I like it.
All right. All right. Well, wrapping this one up. I mean, I'm glad that, we kind of, like, it all connects, right? But it seems like this just sort of really launched us into a whole conversation, and I'm glad that we took this one on, and thanks to Mr. Huxley for this great gift of a quote, again, because of how insightful and incisive it is in pointing out propaganda, helping us to point out propaganda when we're being subject to it, like because of what it's doing to us on an emotional and perceptive level. This is what's really underneath the whole thing, is it's making you hate, and it's making you perceive to create that. It's making you perceive in a way to create hate, right? And division in yourself. And again, obviously this conversation naturally comes to, like a place of compassion and again, with art and being a connective, compassionate force, that's really what it's all about. And we live in a time right now where we are inundated with propaganda, not just from major corporate media outlets, certainly there, of course, but also it's coming from independent sources as well. I know, I've been on a tirade right now on my YouTube feed. Anything that comes up from a channel that uses, titles like watch blah, 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 destroy blah, 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 watch blah, 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 annihilate blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I'm just like, that's straight propaganda. Yeah. You just think about the wording of those kinds of things. It's like you're talking about someone destroying somebody, even though they're not literally destroying them. But you're talking about this person's just bleh. Let's just reduce them. Let's make them nothing. Let's make them, again, not human. There's a dehumanizing thing, and I'm just like, I don't want any part of this. I don't want to participate in this. And again, it's so tempting. It's so tempting sometimes when those things come up. I really honestly wish that there would be some sort of regulation on that. I'm not usually a huge fan of regulation for the most part, but it's like, I really do wish there was something done about language like that. As much that's a whole other topic. Cause I am a proponent of free speech. But, it's like stuff like that is just like, I'm like, really? Annihilate, destroy? I don't know. There's those words are all violent words, I'm getting off the track. But that's just something personally I'm doing. But it's because it's like, I understand this is that is propaganda. When somebody is putting that stuff out there, that is propaganda. And I don't want any part of it, right? Because I want to feel connected to the world. I want to feel like when I go out there into the world that I'm amongst people who understand me at the deepest, most fundamental levels. And it's not like that's just some pie in the sky thing that I want. It's because it's actually fucking true. Yeah. Again, that's what art is setting out to do. It's trying to remind us, it's like, hey, we're all underneath it all. We're all the same. We're all figuring this shit out, stumbling through all this whole thing, and we all just we want love and joy and connection and we're all the same underneath all of it. And we're all scared, and we're all, and it's so it's not some just sort of me trying to be idealistic. It's because it's damn true, but it's so easy to forget the truth of that, and I want to be out there and feel and know that sense of connection. I don't know if there's anything more than I can say after that, really. But yeah, that's the insidiousness of propaganda, is it masquerades as being the truth, but it's the biggest fucking lie that you could ever listen to.
Yes. Yeah. Masquerades as being the truth. Wow. This conversation, I mean, there's so many things that we are digging into, and it gets difficult to navigate some of this, because I know how it can be emotionally provocative to even look at some of this stuff. So for anybody who's hung on and listened through this conversation and gone on this journey with us, I really appreciate you for doing so, especially if you're willing to maintain a level head and like walk away from this and just think about it, and kind of like, at the end of the day, like everything I do in my life, I think it ultimately just comes back to like being the person my younger self needed. It's really like that kind of idea resonates with me so much. It's just like, I just want to be the fucking big brother, the father, the partner that I needed. And that helps me to kind of calibrate to where I'm going, who I'm becoming, and what I'm doing. And, I have been in like altercations and fights with people before. I've been there. I've experienced that, and I'm capable of it. The thing is that we're all capable. We're all capable of violence. We're all capable of these things. And the thing is like, I think sometimes people they think they want it. Like, I think like you want to express some of these angers and some of these feelings that you have. And then there's other people who are more on the defensive foot, where it's like, well, I'll deal with it if I have to. If you push me hard enough, I'll deal with it. I was probably more in that category for myself. And then there's the people who are like pacifists, in the sense that like, I don't want any part of it. I don't even want to acknowledge that it exists. The reality is like the person who's in the pacifist and the person who's like the aggro-aggressor type of person, you're both just sides of the same coin. And if you're somewhere in the middle of that spectrum, it's like, just like, see that the fact that we're all trying to work through this shit in our own way. I found that most people are actually a lot more reasonable than I think they are if I'm not reactive. Case in point, I used to do live streaming. I did it for about 6 months working for this company. And I remember I used to have, occasionally I would have like almost people like come on and they would troll or like try to bully on the stream. And I would just say to them, I'm like, hey, you're fucking better than that. Why don't you just cut it out? And they would. And I just wouldn't react. I'd be like, you say whatever you want to say. I don't fucking care. Like, the thing is like, I just think you're better than that. And I would just turn it on them. And most people would be like, yeah, like, and one guy, I remember one example, this person came on. I don't really know, because you don't see the person communicating with you, but they see you. But I told them they were better than that. And they was, oh, it was my friend. My friend came on and said all this stuff. And I didn't really mean it, and they're like, and then we started talking. We had a good conversation. Thing is like, if someone comes at you and attacks you with their propaganda idea, right? They're your enemy, you're bad. Turn it on them and go like, is this how you want to be? Is this how you want to engage? Just turn it on them. Like, really ask them, because I guarantee it's not how they want to engage. That's how they're thinking they need to engage. And this is something that I had to work through in my own life. Most people are armored up, coming into things, expecting a fight, thinking they need to protect themselves. But when you show them, hey, you're safe here. I get it. We don't have to see things the same way. I'm not going to attack you. I can accept that you see it your way. Can you accept that I see it my way? Do you really want to fight me? Is that what you're after? Most people don't really want to fight. It's one of the reasons I love that movie Fight Club. Such a great fucking movie. Most people don't want to fight. Come to push and shove, we don't actually want to do it. And you'll see that if people feel safe, all of a sudden, fucking a lot of this violent shit goes away. So I would argue this: propaganda is not only to make you dehumanize the other people, it's to make you feel unsafe. And anything in this world that you're getting that makes you feel unsafe, I would say put it through your filter of, wait a minute, is this propaganda? Because you're safe, you're okay. And once you feel safe, I want to see what you would do. I bet you'd create, I bet you'd express yourself, I bet you'd tell the truth. The reason why you don't do this stuff is you don't feel safe. And I would argue, this is my final thought, I would argue that propaganda is the very thing that silences us from telling the truth.
Thank you for listening in on our conversation today. We hope you found something helpful that you can carry forward with you. Head over to our website, wayoftheartist.com, for more free exclusive material and learn about the show. If you haven't already, please support us by subscribing to the show, sharing it with people you know, and keeping compassionate, creative conversation going.